How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the big thing. It is UAP Tuesday. I know. We were a little late today, but I have a really good reason for it, and I'll explain in just a little bit. But we got a lot to talk about today, and the majority of it is all about the Soul Foundation, man. They dropped every single video that we were like, when the videos coming? Maybe they're going to do it like, day by day. They dropped it all. And whether it was David Grusch, Garry, Nolan, Karl Nell, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The who's who of the community was there talking about it. And the stuff that they were talking about, boom. I mean, we knew that some of this stuff was coming, and we knew some of this stuff was kind of leaked. But when you hear it, and you hear people talking about exactly what they're talking about in general, and then if you couple that with some of the stuff that we heard on the reason why we were late today, which again, I will sorry to be vague, but you'll like the explanation. It all is kind of starting to make sense with a kind of optimistic, fingers crossed, maybe this is it. But then again, the pessimist always goes, yeah, but who's the next Mike Turner? So there's a lot to talk about here. And there's also, remember, and I think we've covered it on the show before, there was that video that I know they showed on like Larry King years ago, and the military said, look, we had this missile going up, and then we have video of this thing unknown comes in and pops it with two lasers, and then the thing hits the ocean. It doesn't blow up. It just, that's back in the news. And Lou Elizondo said he saw that stuff, and he told Sean Kirkpatrick about it. And Kirkpatrick said no, that was nothing. It was nothing. But speaking of Sean Kirkpatrick, he's changing his story now. Apparently, rumored is that now he's saying, no, they told me to say that stuff. And whether or not it's actually from him or not, we'll debate that also. So that and more on today's show of The Big Thing UAP Tuesday. If you're brand new to this channel and you've never been here before, we cover this every Tuesday. We talk about the phenomenon every Tuesday. And you hit that button right there. You subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 200,000. So if it just came and popped up because you're interested in the subject, be with us here every Tuesday. Be part of the conversation. If you hit that button, it helps tremendously. Because we saw, like, there was one episode we had where it was like close to like 400. It was over 400,000. And yet we're at 125,000 subscribers. So if everybody hit that button, we'd be closer to 1 million. Because we need that many people to be part of this conversation. We need that many people to get unplugged from the Matrix. So hit that button, man. Comment, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere podcasts are found. It's myself. It's Mark Riley. It's The Big Thing. Let's do it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Big Thing, UAP Tuesday. It's myself, joined as always by my partner in crime, Mark Yodius Riley. What's up, Mark?
Kristian, I am skating on an existential lake of magic.
What is that?
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know. It sounds cool though. What does that mean?
It means that my mind is completely blown.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah.
It is. I am questioning the existence of everything.
Right.
Hence the existential. And the lake is all the thoughts that I am skating on. And it's magic.
Yeah, listen, and he, as they said in the great philosophical movie Coming to America, he ain't lying.
I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have you here. So let's tell them first and foremost why the show's late. So originally we were going to have a very different episode debut today. Yeah. We had on, and we will have on, Steve Bassett in studio, who, if you don't know, is the first UAP lobbyist in Washington. And he was on, and we met him we shot at the same studio that we shoot Katie Sackhoff's podcast on. If you guys have been paying attention to that show, you can see the one she just did with Michael Rosenbaum. And anyway, so we shot there, and we had it's like an hour and a half. And to be honest, and I say this with I'm not being anything except in awe. I think we said like 4 or 5 things throughout it, and it's fine because the guy had so much information, and kind of really blew our minds. And we were talking about the Soul videos and we were talking about all these things, but there's a certain thing that he said, and I don't want to spoil it for next week, where he gives a percentage on something. And I was like, I'm going to hold you to that percentage, because if that happens, and the reason, and he brings, and what he says is also very relevant to the stuff that Karl Nell was talking about in these Soul videos. So what did you think about having Steve on, and excited for the people to see that?
Oh, I think everybody is going to lose their mind for this. You said it. Not a lot of back and forth, I would say, as far as interviews are concerned, but that's by design.
Yeah.
I think that was the best thing that could ever happen, because we say a lot here, Kristian, about that what this show is really the two of us are just kind of regular guys asking questions.
Yeah.
We are looking for answers. We have been, however you want it, what metaphor do you want? We've been unplugged.
Right.
We have awakened. We are curious. We are asking questions.
Yeah.
More than anything. And I was able to, I won't speak for you, of course, but I was able to sit there and ask a few questions.
Yeah, sure.
And just so many things just came, so much perspective was found in this interview, and I can't wait for everybody to see it. I had the time of my life.
Yeah, so it was a great conversation overall. We sat down with him afterwards, had a conversation with him, and just telling him beforehand that we were just two normal dudes trying to figure this stuff out, and asking questions and trying to convey that to other people who are like, what is this? Like, I'm skeptical. What's going on? And then the Soul videos dropped. And so the timing of it is like, well, wait a minute. We were planning on airing it today, but then we're like, well, we've got to talk about these videos. And we talked about them like briefly. It was so early. It just dropped. Steven didn't even have a chance to look at any of them. So we were like, we can't really talk about that too much. So we wanted to talk about a few other things. And we're like, no, let's push that a week and let's really dive into these videos, because even like we have so much stuff. Like even Pavel interviewed Nick Cook, who is a best-selling author, and he's an award-winning journalist. So we have clips from that he has on his channel that he's given us the okay to air some of the clips. That was very interesting. And the stuff that dropped about Sean Kirkpatrick. I mean, there's just so much to talk about today that I was like, we can't really. I was like, we have to do it. And I said to you, I thought about it, because we'd shot that interview yesterday, and then I was like, maybe I can hit up Riley and see if he wants to shoot like Monday night. But then I'm like, I was exhausted. You were exhausted. I wanted to really dive into all the videos and really look at them a little bit more and have kind of a fresh mind. And so I figured if people get the show a little late today, then so be it. But yeah, man, let's start. The first thing I wanted to start with was actually this tweet. All right, Garry Nolan writes, professionalizing a new field of inquiry and human endeavor takes effort and time. This began literally decades ago through the efforts of many. This culminated more recently with the videos brought forward by Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon, and the New York Times article by Ralph Blumenthal, Leslie Kane, and Helen Cooper. This includes the efforts of Tom DeLonge, the several Navy pilots who have come forward, Dave Grusch, Karl Nell, extraordinary efforts by Senators Schumer, Rounds, Gillibrand, Rubio, several House representatives, too many to mention here, but kudos and thanks, and many others are all part of a relay race. We hand the baton off and move forward to an academic and commercial leg of the race with other groups like ASA, UAP Coalition for Scientific Research, Galileo Project, and many longstanding public legacy organizations. Cell Foundations thanks Stanford University and Medical School for their unmitigated support in putting together this conference, and we are incredibly thankful to the speakers and participants for their efforts of the conference. Moreover, we immensely thank the film and sound editors, Matt Ford, Fritz Kramer, Jen Carson, Weatherby, and David West, videography, for making the talks fantastic and the sound so incredibly professional. So that's just basically saying, okay, look, here we go. Let's get into this thing. And then if you go to the YouTube channel, and of course I looked, I'm surprised News Nation didn't cover this. The Hill didn't cover this. I couldn't believe it. I was like, they're going to cover it. No one covered this. I was like, what in the world?
And I'm interested to see once the coverage starts to kick in, because I feel like, the Soul Foundation dropped a lot.
Everything, yeah.
They dropped a lot of videos, and I was, we've been in the YouTube space for so many years now. I looked at the views and I'm surprised, and I think that is very much going to change, because of the wealth of information that was dropped. And I mean, I'm looking at those names that you just read off. It's like the Avengers coming together.
Yeah.
Finally,
Yeah.
you know, and Young Avengers and the X-Men all in one. It's incredible to see all of this, and this opinion is very much colored from our conversation yesterday. But just to look at this, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It is incredible.
It's incredible. So I'm just going to read off some of the names of the people of the videos that they actually posted. I'll show it. I'll show it here. All right, just look at some of these names already: David Grusch, Jacques Vallée, Diana Walsh-Pasuka, Iris Victor Grove, Beatrice. I'm not going to get all these names right, so forgive me. Beatrice Varelo, Timothy Gildet, Christopher Mellon, Jeff Kripal, Larry McGuire, Avi Loeb, Isla Whitley, Kevin Newth, Paul Thigpen, Gary Nolan, Hal Puthoff, Peter Skekfish, Karl Nell. That's just like some of the peeps, Riley. I mean, that's all the peeps, but that's like, I mean, that's all the peeps. I mean, it might, minus maybe a few here there, but they had everybody who's everybody on this thing, and it was exactly. Remember now, we talked about this in November when there was that leaked photo about the disclosure plan. That was like one of our big episodes that we had talked about. The photo got leaked, and everybody started talking about, well, what the hell is it? What does that mean? What does that mean? Now, the one that I want to talk about, I guess, first is the Karl Nell one, right? Because that to me was the most, I thought was the most fascinating, because it was really like the disclosure about the plan itself.
Yeah.
What did you think about that one?
It really is interesting to see the plan that they have and how meticulous it is, and how they are going into stuff that we have been talking about endlessly.
Right.
And to see that it's a really interesting, and they used like what was the word he was using for like Schumer and stuff? It was like
the something 8, right?
Yeah, the something 8. Yeah, and there's apologies if I get anything wrong, because there was a lot of information that came out. But yeah, they're talking about like the angels that are Schumer and Rounds and these guys that are coming in at the Senate to bring this forward, to finally show some transparency. The players, I say the Avengers, the X-Men, because that's what it feels like. The mentioning of this is what it is. But what really stood out to me is how long of a process this has been.
Yeah.
And how, what's his name? The guy in the A-Team would say it. I love it when a plan comes together.
Right. Well,
that's what it feels like.
It does. The only thing, and I wrote this in the comment of Karl Nell's, is because they were and this is the one that I would tell people to watch first, because as he's going through everything, and the idea of how long the transparency would take, and the difference between catastrophic disclosure and regular,
that was fascinating,
and plan disclosure, like, and the deal with like catastrophic is just somebody just, whether it's our enemies or someone in general, just dumping everything, all the information all at once, which they say is not the way to go. But one of the things that they say, and that he says, is that it's so crucial that the Rounds and Schumer bill goes through, and what that would mean. And it's also very relevant to the conversation that we had with Steve Bassett, and talking about all the things that was intended and what that bill actually meant, and when you hear Steve Bassett's take on it, of how ultimately Rounds and Schumer were playing chess while everybody else was playing checkers. But it seems very reliant in this presentation by Karl Nell that they needed this thing to get passed in the way that it was intended, and it didn't. It was gutted by Turner and all these other people. It was gutted. So I'm curious that, because they released this, Riley, as if, because it was shot in November. The thing got crushed at the end of December, or gutted by the end of December. So they don't give any updates inside of it. Like, where does that put your plan? Because your plan is determined by this particular thing moving forward. It doesn't mean it's going to halt it, but it means, like, what is it? It's going to change it for sure. Like, what does that mean overall? That's the question that I would ask like Garry, Nolan, or Karl Nell if I had them on the show. It'd be like, well, what does that mean next? Like, because that's you guys seem very reliant that was going to plan. Like when Grusch was on Rogan, he was like, this is very important that this needs to happen. But these guys, and that's when he called out the two mics for doing what they're doing. The first time I was aware of their names was because of that show. But and I think his interview with Rogan was after this conference, I believe, or around the same time. So
it had to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I don't know like what that means overall, but this is some of the stuff. This was an interesting part. You had mentioned, the review board and Schumer Round's amendment and all that stuff that Karl Nell was talking about. And this is kind of what he said. Let me show that. All right. So here's a little bit from the Karl Nell conference.
And then this board is to adjudicate whether the stuff actually is TOO and NHI and whether it should be postponed or disclosed. And we'll get into some of the ramifications of that in a minute. So how's this board going to do this? They're going to develop a plan. And this is a big difference from the JFK legislation. So this plan for all records that they deem need to be postponed for whatever reason has got to indicate a benchmark-driven process with specified occurrences and timeframes for downgrading, review, and declassification for everything that's postponed. And then this plan supersedes all previous declassification guidance that may have been applicable to this material. That's extremely important. That's different than the JFK. The JFK was basically like, should we postpone or not? Okay, and then it gets kicked down the road if they say postpone. Schumer basically says, if you're postponing, you got to tell me exactly what you got to do to release it in a benchmark-driven plan. And then this plan basically becomes the declassification guidance going forward. Now, the point is that the president ultimately has the sole and non-delegable authority. So Congress can't impinge upon, presidential executive authority. So the president makes the ultimate decision based on these recommendations, but once the recommendation's made, they're either immediately disclosed or it's postponed, as we said, or put into, and the decision's put into the Federal Register within 14 days. So the president has to provide a reason to the board on what his decision is, both classified and unclassified. The unclassified reason gets published publicly within 14 days. The other point here is that all the records are to be disclosed within 25 years of the date of creation, unless the president deems otherwise. And Congress has appropriated or authorized the appropriation of $20 million to do this.
And also want to thank Mike Colangelo for posting all this stuff. He really breaks it down well on Twitter. He posted a lot of these clips. You should check out his Twitter account to see a lot of these breakouts if you want to see, because he went through all of them. It's a great follow. So Riley, you hear that? What comes to mind?
Well, the first thing that really stands out to me is they mentioned the holier than thou, or maybe that's not even the right way to put it, but JFK.
Yeah.
And what
Holy Grail, maybe? The
Holy Grail, there it is. The Holy Grail of these kind of government transparency talks and precedents. And they mentioned JFK. And that just is so apropos for what this is.
Yeah.
I feel. Because it is a plan, and it's almost like we learned the hard way with JFK. We're trying not to have that happen here. Although I feel like it's already happened because, there's so much smoke,
Sure.
There's a giant fire somewhere, and it's probably in, the basement of the Pentagon. That really stuck out to me, and just, having a very serious plan in place to get things moving. And this is like kind of the opening, the opening statement of that, reveal. And here we go. We're off and running.
I wonder how many of these guys are going to be, there's supposed to be this hearing, the next hearing that's supposed to be like the major hearing with all these people supposed to be coming forward. How many, like Karl Nell is probably someone who's going to testify. You would assume he's got it this time around. You could assume there's like, they said there's anywhere between 15 to 20 people or 40 people. I can't remember what it was. Something like big number because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take something like this, because this is great. What Soul Foundation is doing is great. It's great. And if you're really interested in this topic, to go through what all these experts and people who have been part of this field forever are saying, it's a must listen.
Yeah.
But what's important is that to us, the people who listen to this show, you're going to go and you're going to watch those videos. People who are not paying attention to what's going on are not going to be searching the Soul Foundation videos and don't know what the hell the Soul Foundation is.
Right.
But if the people from the Soul Foundation are talking in front of these, and then the major news outlets start to actually cover it, because you can't deny it anymore. But what Karl Nell is also saying is that you're going to get to a spot where then the president comes out and goes, hey, guess what? And when that happens, it doesn't matter who the president is. Whoever the president is going to say it. And people are going to go, oh, we're living in a very different world now.
Yeah.
And
they emphasize that too. You know, that the president has the sole kind of authority to do this.
Right.
And, you know, if the president were to come out and say,
listen,
okay, it's real.
Right.
We have ETs, or we have crafts, or there are crafts, or there are things that we do not understand and are doing. That's a very different world we live in.
It is.
You
And
know?
so, and you mentioned that, I want to bring that up and actually show this also. If you notice, Karl Nell talks about terms like NHI and he just certain things that he was talking about. And in this particular clip that I thought was fascinating, Riley, is that this is again from Mike, who clips out the part where Karl Nell explains the terms NHI, legacy program, prosaic attribution, and TUO that appeared in the Schumer Rounds Amendment. So for us normal folks, like, well, what the hell does all that mean? Well, I think Karl does a great job here in breaking it down, and here it is.
All right, so I've got to kind of move a little faster here. So these are terms of reference in the legislation. So non-human intelligence, at least 18 times cited in there. Any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of nature or ultimate origin, that may be presumed responsible for UAP, based on the earlier definition, or of which the federal government has become aware. Legacy program, all federal, state, local government, commercial industry, academic, private sector endeavors to collect, exploit, reverse engineer, TUO, or biological evidence of NHI. Prosaic attribution, you remember this was in both of those terms, UAP and TNO. Prosaic attribution, having a human, either foreign or domestic origin. So UAP is non-human, TNO, human. Technology of unknown origin, this is very important for the eminent domain clause. Any material or metamaterial, ejecta, crash debris, mechanisms, machinery, equipment, assemblies or subassemblies, engineering models or processes, damaged or intact aerospace vehicles, or damaged or intact ocean surface or undersea craft associated with UAP or incorporating science and technology lacking prosaic attribution or known means of human manufacture. So that's what eminent domain applies to.
Okay. That is insane. It's insane. It's insane. It's insane in so many different levels that now this is a lot of the stuff that I believe was gutted out of the act, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was in the act. And the fact that, again, the Senate Majority Leader had that in there many times over with the terms NHI and reverse engineering and all these other things in there that this is basically the acknowledgement of him going, yep. And everybody else going, yeah, this is what is out there. And now this is like the steps towards it. And I'm telling you, I can't wait until you guys hear Steve Bassett talk about this next week, because this is all the stuff that he kind of really breaks down as far as the game plan and and Grusch, how he threw everybody off and all these things. And now putting this in acceleration and hearing all these different terms. These are the terms that we as just the normal people need to get more acquainted with, because this is the kind of stuff that's going to come out more, because you're going to go, what the hell is NHI? What the hell is all this stuff means? And this was a very important part of Karl Nell's presentation, I thought, Riley.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's those terms flying out of there, knowing that was part of the thing that was gutted, that it could be looked at in, I'm sorry, I believe it to be confirmation that this is that they have crashed remains. They have that people have been reverse engineering this stuff. That it just feels like a very solid confirmation that this is all really real, really real. That's nice. real, and it blows my mind. I mean, it continues to be this overwhelming, like, I'm sitting here going, we are already in a different world because this is happening, but there are so many people that aren't aware of this,
Right.
that that had no idea that Schumer was standing up there
Right.
and doing this. Yeah, still to this day. Like, I know my father, Schumer, he got up and talked about UAPs, Dad. Huh?
Right.
I didn't see that. Yeah, and he's reading
Everything.
his newspaper,
Right.
which is another interesting point that Steve is going to make when in our episode that I'll just leave for that. But about mainstream media, about why you're not seeing, let's say, ABC, NBC, some of the main, talking about it, but that there are many articles to be found out there in print media.
Yeah.
And that even it's Miss My Dad.
Yeah.
Well, because he doesn't really believe it.
Yeah. And let me show also, this was essentially the thing that was kind of leaked. Here's this whole overall plan that they had. And remember, this is also before the thing got watered down, but here it is. Okay, so he says the way forward, UAP campaign plan lines of effort. So you look at, you remember, if you watched this show a few weeks back and when we talked about this, and it was January 2024 is demonstrate existence, public senator government, you have all this stuff. January 2026, correlate signatures, 2030, characterize performance, October 2034, determine nature, phase 5, engagement, whatever that means, engagement. Then after
and it's indefinite, it's not,
right.
It's October 2034 and then indefinite.
Right. So there's investigation, human ethics, anthropology, sociology, religion, scientific research, natural sciences. I mean, they have all these things that are kind of set up of how they're going to do this. Like they have I love that they've got a full-on plan in place, right? Strategic end state, proper oversight restored, catastrophic disclosure avoided. There's all these things they're trying to do, right? These are all the things that they're trying to do. Now, whether or not they can do it now, and like and that's why I'm so curious with that. And I don't want, again, I'm trying not to spoil the interview, but like what Steve Bassett said about how this could particularly the stuff that Schumer and Rounds did put into play, and it was watered down, that stuff could be reintroduced again, and that Bassett is pretty confident that because of certain things that happened and will happen, it will get passed next time. So I am curious if that is indeed the case and how that's going to work and how they're moving forward in order to do that. Because what Karl Nell also said was they wanted this is okay. So it was called the Gang of Eight, by the way, is what you were talking about.
The Gang of Eight. Yeah, there it is.
So this is one more clip from Karl Nell. Like I said, to me, Karl Nell, I mean, everybody had fascinating stuff, everybody. But Karl Nell to me was the one that I saw so many great clip outs about, and I just saw he just said so much. And there's another reason why I think that this guy should just be talking at a lot of different things, especially at the next hearing if they indeed get him. Let's play this clip, and this is again what they want to do as far as the plan. And this is a longer clip, but it's worth it. So here's the last clip that we'll show of Karl Nell. All right, so the sound is a little, it's not matched up here all the way, so just forgive us in the way that this clip is. So just listen.
Eminent domain. So maybe we'll have some discussion after this. I want to kind of keep going through here, but there are legal pros and cons. Obviously, if you got an aversion to eminent domain, you probably had an aversion to this part of the statute. But the point here is the government wants to restore oversight and control of the material so it can make better progress scientifically on this. And so the challenge is, does that affect intellectual property rights? And the way the legislation is written is it does not, because any IP created out of the material is retained by the owner. All right, terms of reference disclosure. So the point here is there's a difference between controlled disclosure and catastrophic disclosure. Controlled disclosure is using the campaign plan. Catastrophic disclosure, I think, was what was alluded to in the prior discussion, where all the information is just dumped out there by an adversary or non-human intelligence to create societal disruption. All right, so this is an important slide because if we want to facilitate this board doing its work, then the barriers that impede that need to be lowered. And so you need to understand what the impediments are to disclosure. And so there's 6 reasons for non-disclosure: national security, lack of a plan, societal disruption, covert agreement, cover for misdeeds, and organizational intransigence. And you can just derive this from first principles. And so a lot of this has been talked about already, but let's look at societal disruption. Challenge to existing authority structures, ontological shock, market crash, false authority syndrome, stagnation of initiative. All of these are issues that are preventing disclosure. They're going to impact the plan that the board develops. If you actually shred through these issues, you realize these are really not government issues. These issues are more effectively solved in the private sector, in the academic sector, in legal reviews and policy discussions, in the natural sciences. So this tees up the opportunity for Saul Foundation and the members here to contribute to the solution of this plan, because there's a linkage here. So there needs to be a campaign plan to synchronize all this, I would argue. You know, DOD's big into plans. So a campaign plan is like a plan about a plan. It's a meta plan, right? So that means, you know, like, cost schedule performance is really not part of your campaign plan. It's just sort of like, this is the direction we want to go. These are the ends, ways, and means that we want to use. And this is like the kind of shared consensus of what we're trying to do. And the shared consensus I would submit is we want proper oversight, because we've got a government that's run by elected officials, and ultimately they're accountable to the public. And they've already recognized that they don't have the appropriate oversight. So we want to get oversight. And we want to get disclosure, but we want to get it through a controlled process. We want to get it in a way that doesn't create this societal collapse, like Eric Klein talked about in 1177 BC, the system collapse of all the ancient societies. This is the order of the potential concern that might be happening here. And then the third piece is, what do we want to do about this problem? Well, we've got to actually address the scientific, technical, ethical, legal, religious aspects of this, and more people need to be involved if we're going to make that progress. So this is the obligatory DOD type of campaign plan chart. So, yeah, we've had phase 1. We've completed phase 1. I would argue phase 1 ends when we get Schumer. And so it says, you know, demonstrate UAP existence by, you know, January of 24. And you're like, oh, that's crazy. It's never going to happen. It's probably won't happen in my lifetime. I'm saying that already happened. The Gang of 8 just said that we need this legislation, and they don't have proper oversight. So disclosure is a process. It's not an event, and it's going to stair step across these phases. So phase 2 is where academia, I think, comes in, and then ultimately we get to the wider public. And so we see, like, October 2030 is maybe the pivot point when this board sunsets. 7 years for the board to do its job. But in order to facilitate the board doing its job, this philosophical investigation, line of effort B, scientific investigation, line of effort C, and private sector investigation, line of effort D, is where we can all contribute to facilitating and lowering that potential barrier. And so I've got maybe a minute or two. I'm going to just jump through a couple ideas that I've got for each of these lines of effort, if we might do that. So this is the government line of effort. Pass Schumer, grant legal amnesty, centralize the data, create a Manhattan Project to address this area, sponsor National Science Foundation grants, charter an NIE, National Intel Estimate, to assess the public-private positions of every country with this topic and where they are with it, and use that to tee up a United Nations Summit or World Congress on developing new norms of behavior in this context, right? So that would be line of effort A. What about line of effort B, the humanities? I think we need a sociological model for analyzing the societal impact for disclosure, and then developing mitigation strategies a priori to address that. Now, some people think that may be less of a concern or more of a concern. It's kind of irrelevant. Like, it's an unknown right now, but we need a plan to address it to lower that concern. Codify the laws of ethics in an environment where we might have a hierarchy of being, where everyone isn't necessarily having equal competitive potential. It's essentially translating our special relativity version of ethics to a general relativity version of ethics, where you've got the problem of a more advanced civilization coming in and disrupting a less advanced civilization. It's the same issue with AI or colonialism.
I mean, dude, I've heard this stuff already, and every time I hear it again, I'm like, what? It's like,
yeah,
it's everything that, you know, it is one of those things where if you're paying attention to it, and even if all this stuff comes to fruition, I'm still going to be like, wow, it's really happening. But I'm at least preparing myself as I lead up, right? As what they're saying to try to do to everybody else. But you hear that the greater civilization teaching the lesser civilization, and but you see in that slide though where my concern comes, Riley, where I say like, well, here's what has to happen first. The Schumer thing goes and gets passed, and then this, and this, and it's like, yeah, but it didn't. So what's the audible? What's the audible?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I think that I look at this though, the slide, the presentation, the soul, and all the released videos and everything, and it's just they're ready.
Yeah,
they are ready. And this is not something that it's just like, yeah, once that Senate hearing happens and we get all the answers, it's going to be boom. No, they're ready, and it's meticulous in their planning, because it really is. I mean, can you imagine? We're ready for it. You, me, everybody watching here right now, the curious that might have just found us right now, you're a lot more ready than 99 maybe % of the people out there.
Right.
That stuff like this could drop, and it will be a side swipe. It'll be like, whoa, just absolutely, you could be befuddled by this, and you can't even speak a lick of English anymore, and like, what is going on?
I know,
because it is earth shattering. It is the ramifications to consider. If it's just a catastrophic disclosure, things stood out to me. It's like and I'll paraphrase, but like, the societal impact. People like questioning authority. Religious ramifications.
Right.
What is like that? That can be like, Leave the World Behind, that Netflix movie.
Sure.
Right? Did you see that, Kristian?
Yes, Julia Roberts.
With Julia Roberts, yeah. The society just starts to turn on each other.
Right.
There is something to consider in that, and which is scary.
Right.
Which is kind of scary because you can.
Well, they address it too. They address that stuff, and the whole point is that they are trying to go against all the cast, and they have a plan, right? So that was just the Karl Nell stuff, and we're 45 or 40 minutes into this thing, and I got you for a little bit, Riley, right?
Yeah, yeah,
because I feel like this is going to be our supersized episode today.
Yeah, we're fine. Let's go.
But before I do that, guys, I want to let you know I'm very excited that you guys have been with us every week, and I've been getting DMs about not only obviously the phenomenon, but you guys have also been listening, in the fact that we try to keep the show going every week, and we try to continue to do this, and we're getting great sponsors in order to do that. And I'm very excited to tell you about two of our wonderful sponsors right now, and that's both ZBiotics and Rocket Money. I'll tell you about both of them. Here we go. So let me also tell you this. Let me tell you about Rocket Money before we move on. I want to tell you about Rocket Money, guys. Rocket Money to me is just, I've told you so many times, and you guys have heard me talk about Rocket Money. Rocket Money, I've been using now, I think, oh man, it's got to be at least almost 2 years now, 1.5 years, 2 years. And so what Rocket Money does is, you have those subscriptions that you have, and you haven't been paying attention to them. And you're like, oh, that app looks amazing. I'm going to do that app. Oh, it's a free trial period. Great. 30 days. I got it. I'll remember. And you don't remember. And then they start charging you $7, $17, $27, $37 a month. And you're like, whoa, when did that happen? Well, Rocket Money does is they tell you about all the subscriptions that you have and everything that you have. And they go, no, you want that? You need that? Don't do that. They tell you how much money you spent the week before. They tell you how much money you're spending in general. They tell you when you have things coming up, when you got bills coming up, you can link everything to it. It is a lifesaver. I love Rocket Money. I checked it this morning. I said, okay, remember, you have this, and this. Hey, an unauthorized thing. Did you do that? I said, yep, I did do that. Okay, great. Here you go. They can check your credit, everything. RocketMoney.com/big thing. It is so good. I put the link in the description, by the way, RocketMoney.com/big thing. And you will thank me for that. I love Rocket Money.
Ew.
ZBiotics, by the way, if you guys don't know, it's great because I mean, what you can relate to, John, is we can't do it the way we used to.
No,
We were
those
young.
days are done.
No, those days are done. But they are fantastic because it's really a game-changing product. For me, I always use it a night out when I'm drinking, and because it's Z-Biotics, and so I just can't bounce back the way that I used to.
Right.
I got to make a choice. I can either have a great night or a great next day, and that is until I found Z-Biotics. And I'll tell you, there's a surefire way to wake up and feel fresh after a night of drinking, and it is with Z-Biotics. So what is it? Okay, I'm glad you asked. Now I'm going to tell you. Z-Biotics is a pre-alcohol probiotic drink. It is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. Steph Sabral loves these, by the way. Loves them. Nice. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut.
Yeah.
It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that is to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break down this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. And I'll tell you, right before I knew I was going to drink a couple of glasses of wine last night, John, so I had some Z-Biotics. Every time I have it, right before I do notice a difference the next day. I'm able to go. Even after a night out or a night of having some fun, I can confidently plan on doing all these shows and being able to work. I didn't have anything, like I said, not foggy, nothing. Because I was on the fence about it at first too. Because then I was hanging out with Steph, and she was telling me about it, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll give it a shot. And believe me, guys, it's the real deal. So I gave it a try, especially yesterday. It's amazing, and go and do it. You go to zbiotics.com/big thing. You'll get 15% off your first order when you use Big Thing at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you are unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money with no questions asked. So remember to head to zbiotics.com/big thing. Use that code Big Thing at checkout for 15% off. Thank you to Z-Biotics for sponsoring this episode and for the good times, man, for sure. All right. Thank you to our friends both at Z-Biotics and Rocket Money. As I mentioned in the beginning there, that it is very important that if you have the means to and you can support the show, try one of our wonderful sponsors. Try them both. The ones that I just told you about, Z-Biotics and Rocket Money. They're both super helpful. I love them. And I think that you will too. So, and let me know once you do. So links in the description. I always pin it as the first comment. All right, Riley, let's get into the Christopher Mellon stuff.
We are not dealing, at least not exclusively, with an intangible interdimensional presence that has for centuries been seeking to subtly influence human affairs. Something along these lines could be happening. It's a fascinating issue. But our military is encountering intelligently controlled, solid objects invading restricted military airspace, sometimes flying in formation. In many cases, they're emitting radiation in the 1 to 3 and 8 to 12 gigahertz range. Multiple credible reports indicate these objects have rendered segments of our nuclear deterrent inoperable. In other recent cases, they're jamming radars on fighter aircraft. We also have multiple cases of near mid-air collisions and other cases involving serious injuries to military and civilian personnel. Indeed, this is an area of research for Dr. Nolan and the Soul Foundation. I'm here to support Garry's and Peter's efforts to advance the scientific study of UAP, but I also recognize that as much as it might like to, we can't let the government divest itself of this issue. Similarly, the government does not have the luxury of limiting itself to pristine scientific information. This is one of the areas in which I differ from Dr. Kirkpatrick, who claims there is, quote, no credible, unquote, evidence of UAP demonstrating capabilities or doing things that violate our understanding of science. To my mind, the Nimitz aviators and radar operators and technicians are eminently credible. The intelligence community certainly prefers rigorous scientific information whenever possible, but it would be untenable, if not suicidal, for the intelligence or law enforcement communities to limit themselves to robust and repeatable sensor data. We rarely have the luxury of sensor information on the intentions of foreign leaders or the precise capabilities of adversary forces, so we do the best we can with what we have. We should consider the accounts of the Nimitz aviators and radar operators as highly credible evidence of intelligently controlled craft doing things we cannot emulate and don't understand. For example, as noted in an earlier presentation, The Tic Tac went supersonic without a sonic boom. It overcame G-forces that would destroy anything built by man. There was no evidence of the plasma that we would normally expect to see at such extreme velocities. I realize the limitations of human reporting, but I see no reason to suddenly change the rules and standards we normally use in the Intelligence Committee when evaluating UAP. I'm raising these issues to remind that the paramount question about UAP for government policymakers and many members of the public will undoubtedly be whether UAP pose an existential threat. I'm thrilled to be supporting investigations of UAP signatures, propulsion materials, metamaterials, and so forth, but we can't dodge this issue in making the case for disclosure. We have to address it head on. Admittedly, nothing as ontologically shocking as disclosure has ever occurred, certainly not in modern times, but there's some interesting precedents we can examine.
I mean, I think that one was very important.
That's huge.
Yeah, because
this is the one for me.
Yeah,
it gets me. It gets me.
Because that's the one that we ultimately, why we started doing this in the first place. It's like,
yes,
okay, we don't know what it is. We don't know what it is, but there's clearly something flying around in the sky that, as he said, very credible reports and very credible people who have seen these things. And the idea that there's been some of the reported in like the late 60s about the entire nuclear, normally there was like, if you go into the report of it, there was like the nuclear facility that was normally, you know, you'd have like maybe every once in a while, maybe there'd be like a little bit of a faulty missile, and maybe it was possible that one of them shut down, maybe. Mm-hmm. But one event where they saw something hovering above it, and where the witnesses saw it, shut them all down. The entire thing, like all was 5 or 6 or however many there were. I'm definitely not getting it all right. And like I said, not an expert, just from what this case says. And there's like a few of those witnesses still alive, I think, from that time. But it's clearly one of the reports that Mellon is mentioning. He's talking about how the fact that these things are going sonic boom with no sound and all, like there's, and if
the G-force would crush these things.
Yeah, and I love how he opens it. I love how he opens it up and says, "Look, we're not necessarily saying here that it's interdimensional and all these type of things, which it very well could be, but that's not the point. The point is there's stuff that's in the sky flying around that's doing things that we don't know how it's doing it. We don't know how they're doing it, and it's been happening for a long time." And this is one of the reasons we need disclosure. And I like how professionally he was like, I don't agree with Dr. Kirkpatrick and what he's saying about this because this. And he uses the science of it all. So I thought this was a very important part of the presentation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there's especially a line that I circle. You know, we have multiple cases of near mid-air collisions and other cases involving serious injuries to military and civilian personnel.
Right.
Indeed, this is an area of research Dr. Nolan and the Soul Foundation they want to do. So, you know, that's so important, is that, okay, we're not saying they're little green men from Mars. We're not saying they're interdimensional. We're not saying, you know, they're Santa Claus. We are saying that we have credible reports of objects that have rendered, you know, our radars going off, have the nuclear radioactive signatures, and that we have credible witnesses and instances, multiple cases of near mid-air collisions and other cases involving serious injury. That, to me, is reason enough for government disclosure, because it's putting our military in jeopardy, including our civilian populace. That is so important. The civilians fly around every day. We fly around every day in an airplane. Now, we may not, you and I, and many people may not be trained in putting our lives in jeopardy every day like our military do. But this all goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
You know, they're witnessing these things. The Tic Tac, he brings up the Tic Tac, which is so important, because that is something, that is video that is out there that everybody can see and go, what is that?
Right.
You know, and he brings up Kirkpatrick again. You know, sometimes these things get away from them. That thing gets away from you? Right. Yeah. It got away from you because it flew the fuck away.
Right.
Excuse me, my language.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely, for sure. And I think that when you look at the way that he puts this all together, I think that they have so many. This is what the Soul Foundation did very well inside of this, is that they hit it from all different sides, right? They hit it on the plan itself. They hit it on the military side of it. They hit it on the side where they're like, oh, this is what's out there right now. They also hit it from the side of like all the crazy stuff of like what was recovered, all these. Now, Hal Puthoff, somebody that's been around for a long time and been part of these programs. And did you ever? I've sent it to you, so I know the answer is going to be no, and I'm going to be mad at you. Did you ever watch that Y-Files episode I sent you? No.
I did not.
Okay, great. So
yeah, sorry.
Inside that episode,
I need to sit down and watch it.
You
I
do,
know.
because inside that episode, they talk about the remote viewing and all that stuff too. But somebody who was highly involved in that program was Hal Puthoff. So Hal Puthoff has been involved in a lot of. He also spoke in this particular conference, and the stuff that he says is nuts. Yeah. So this is a longer video, 5 minutes. But well worth it, because gonna blow your mind. At least mine it did. So let's play this clip, and then we'll talk about this on the other side, because this one to me is bonkers magoo.
Yeah.
Now, the list of things they wanted us to investigate, and I want you to think about the fact that they must have known something to make a list like this. They were interested in 12 potential threat areas with regard to UAP: lift, propulsion, control, power generation, space-time translation, materials, configuration structure, signature reduction, human effects, human interface, armament, and peripheral support issues. Well, that's a pretty intelligent list. So chances are you've got some knowledge that's driving this list. So our ingoing assumption was, okay, maybe what we had heard way back in 2004 was true, and that is countries do have access to crash-proof materials. Okay, so, well, let's just go get their materials and get them into the scientific community. Part of my job was to try to negotiate that. And the answer was, this is so compartmentalized, it just isn't going to happen. When I say compartmentalized, I mean people had stuff in their basements that they would love to have brought up to their scientists and engineers on the top floor, but it was so compartmentalized and so secure, they couldn't do that. So that turned out to be a non-starter. Said, okay, well, let's try plan B. Pass all the materials to us, we'll set up a kind of a buffer organization, and then we'll come in the front door for your people to work on it, and we won't reveal where this stuff came from, so that'll give you, what you need to separate it. Well, that got shot down big time, so we went to plan C. Plan C was, okay, we can't do this the obvious straightforward way, all this technical stuff. So how about this? Let's go to all the experts in the world that we wish we could have passed this information on to, and tell them that we're just doing a survey for Bigelow Aerospace. We'd like to know where your field will be in the year 2050. But the quality papers we got, I think, are probably almost as good as if we had been able to share materials and so on. And as you know, we have people like Dave Grusch coming forward and saying straight out, we've got materials, craft, and bodies. He's not the only one. As it turns out, the person who ran the program at DIA for us was Jim Lekatsky, if you're familiar with that name. And they just published a book, Lekatsky, who ran the program from DIA, Col Karl, who was the project manager at Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Studies, who was the prime contractor, and George Knapp, called Inside the U.S. Government Covert UFO Programs Initial Revelations. And one of the key phrases in there that certainly caught my attention when I saw it was that Jim Lakatsky, who is also a very high intelligence community, responsible individual, reveals in the book that we have craft of unknown origin and we've gotten inside it. So it isn't just Dave Grusch as a high-level intelligence person bringing this out to the world. We now have the person who ran this program, which is a very significant program. So anyway, that's where we've come to. So I think now's the time that we have all these reasons to take this really seriously and to expect that something is going to come out into the public. And of course, many of you know about the Schumer Amendment, where, you can't believe it, in a congressional amendment, the word NHI, non-human intelligence, appears over 20 times. And if that passes, things will move forward at some relatively rapid clip.
All right, a lot of it's like the Lakatsky stuff and the fact that was the whole breach, the whole thing. Where this is the guy who ran Puthoff, who ran all these programs, saying that here's another guy. Now, I think that they got to get. I know that James Lakatsky said he doesn't want to testify, but I think they're going to have to subpoena this guy. I think they got to. They got to get him in there and have him do it. But the thing that bums me out at the very end of it is everyone is saying the same thing. Oh, but man, if this Schumer bill passes, it's going to be. Well, it didn't. I mean, it passed, but it got gutted. So it's like. So I still want to ask every single one of these people, whether it's Puthoff or Nolan or like what the hell is what's the audible? Like, what's the audible? Because every single person in every one of these things is like, well, once this bill goes through, it's going to move. Well, it didn't go through. So what I wanted to hear if it doesn't, because at the time they still knew that there were people, maybe they didn't know. I thought they did. People trying to throw their weight around like the Mike Turners of the world. And because what he's saying though, Riley, talking about the different ships and the different things that they have. And like, I just don't understand. I still don't get it. I don't get it that if people, even someone who's a skeptic coming into this, what is the end game for all of these people? If they're making up these stories, what's the end game for all the different like collusions of similar reports of high-ranking officials? Are we just hiring a bunch of like whack jobs to run these highly programs, or should you go? Well, there might be some real merit to this stuff that I didn't even know about. Like, I'm hoping that the latter is what it is. That people kind of going, I didn't know the extent of what, because I didn't when I was watching like that 5-parter. I didn't know the extent of how many military people like knew so much. And yeah, I always thought it was like Billy Bob and whoever behind a shed going, oh, I just saw something fly by. But then when you actually see that it's like how many military people, and you look at people like Puthoff and Karl Nell and Garry Nolan, these are all people that are like
Brian Graves now.
Everybody that's involved in these. That's just, I mean, Lakatsky, Grusch, like all these different people who are, these aren't people that you're like, like I understand. I mean, I understand, because if it turns out that he's telling the truth, people are gonna have a lot of egg on their face. But someone like Bob Lazar, right? Like when Bob Lazar was like the only guy, and people like you'll see it in comments, and Stephen Greer's another one where you'll see it in comments where people are like, and even if I ask the audience, what do you think about Bob Lazar? What do you think about Stephen Greer? I'm gonna guarantee that there's gonna be a lot of people who think, no, legit, and then there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna go, nah, fraud. And I think that there's more of that conversation with those two than there are the Karl Nells of the world, and I don't have an opinion on the other two, by the way, either. I'm just saying, like, as far as when you look at the majority, when you see just the comments of what I'm seeing. But not for these other people we're talking about. Like, I just don't see the end game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's so when all this started coming out, it really, for me, and I'll only speak for myself here, but when Grusch came forward, that was the turning point for me,
Right.
because he was so credible and high ranking,
Right.
and had the military service and had the intelligence background, where you couldn't, at least for me, as somebody that likes to consider myself educated, me looking at this man going, wait a minute, and thinking to myself, what does he have to gain by coming forward, right? Because you mentioned some of these other names, and they're so like kind of, they've been doing this for a long time. And I think the general audience or populace can look at it and just classify it as like, that guy's crazy.
Yeah.
And no matter what, like Harvard, he's a kook. He's kind of, maybe he maybe he saw something. I don't know. I mean, one or two, you can kind of see why people just kind of classify them over here as being like, that's an outlier. Now we have all these names coming forward, and military, and Grusch started it for me, like I said, and then you list off a number of military personnel, and you start to ask the question, what do they have to gain? And now when there's so many of them coming forward, what is this? Do they send an Evite out,
Right.
and they all come to the same place and go, this is what we're going to do to fool everybody? No, it's just, I'm just looking at it rationally. Why would they come forward with this, not necessarily evidence, because some of them will have it, we're going to get there, but with these allegations, I guess you can say, with people coming forward like this,
right?
What do they have to gain? They are credible, they are educated, they are military, they are people of high-ranking intelligence, all these things. The end game is to convince the skeptics out there,
right?
And they need hard proof. And there are people that are saying, we have proof. And that's what the end game is. And that's why this is going to take, because I feel like we are literally at the tipping point.
Yeah.
All of this is coming out now. This is it. This is the snowball is huge.
You would assume so.
It's a boulder now going down a mountain. It's gaining so much momentum, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. And that's what I'd like to make that clear also, is that even though I do think that the boulder might have like hit a wall when the gutting happened, I don't think that the boulder fell apart. I think the boulder just stopped and has to roll in a different direction in order to get down the hill.
That's a good way to look at it.
But the other thing is that this was also very interesting, I found, with the Hal Puthoff stuff. And that's where he went to, he went to a conference. I think, what year was it? It was 2005. And so Hal was recently part of a panel assembled in Washington under semi-official auspices to discuss the potential impact of publicly revealing the reality of UFOs. This is in 2005. And the group that he was in at the time ultimately decided against disclosure in 2005. So they talked to him about why that was. I thought this is pretty interesting. Here, check this out.
Now, along the way, something that came across my path in this was that I was contacted by a CEO of a think tank in Washington, D.C. This is back a couple of decades ago. He says, I want you to come and participate in a conference here in Washington. I said, well, frankly, I'm too busy. What's it about? He says, I can't tell you what it's about. But if you come and you participate, you will consider it later to be one of the most important conferences you ever been to. Well, since I have respect for him and his background and many things he's done, I did finally decide to come to this conference. And when I arrived, there were about, 15, 20 people. I recognized some of them from the military, from CIA, DIA, some businessmen, and so on. So I thought, well, this is quite an interesting group of people. And so to start the conference off, he said, this conference is about disclosing something to the American public. As a startup position, let's assume that there have been crash retrievals by Russia, China, and the United States. And the question is, can we bring this out to the public? And so I think and most of the people I knew, when you talked to them later, said, oh, this is really cool. I mean, this could really go someplace. So he said, okay, the strategy we're going to use is we're going to make a list of all the areas that you think would be affected by this. And then on each one, you're going to have to grade them on a scale from +9 to -9 as to the level of impact and whether it's positive or negative. Okay, so we started out by making lists. So we started out with the obvious things. Well, I mean, the stock market, maybe religions, well, certainly politics would be affected. So we made a long list, and it was really a long list. And the time we got down to the bottom of the list, we were really in the weeds. Like, okay, if corporation A has access to retrieve materials that corporation B doesn't, then when this comes out, corporation B is going to sue corporation A, they're going to sue the government. This is really going to be a tough thing to kind of handle. So, okay. So anyway, we broke up into groups, each taking a certain number of the things that were in our list. Okay. And in my group, we added up the numbers, +9 to -9. And we ended up in the negative category, even though we were kind of positively disposed to the idea. So I thought, well, maybe that just has to do with the particular list that we got. So then I talked to other people that were on other lists and said, you know, we came to a negative number also. Well, make a long story short, it turned out that everybody going through these lists, there's a very sophisticated situation with complex computers and big screens and all that kind of stuff. It finally came down to the fact that the problem was there's so many areas to handle, and there was no way to handle them all at the same time. And so the final result was, therefore, the leader said, we're going to recommend that we don't go forward with this. And so those of us who were participating in this were pretty disappointed, thinking, we started thinking that, this would be a good thing to do.
Okay, so, I mean, that's like, the fact that they 20 years ago had the who's who inside the government, like this is actually CIA and all these, doesn't that say anything to people? Why would this guy say that? Like, why would he say that? Why would he just make up this story of like, I'm going to tell people that there was actually a disclosure thing, that all these people were around, and then we decided not to do it because of all this is like credible stuff people believe. Like, what, for the pessimist watching, this is a question I'm legit asking.
Yeah.
The pessimist that's watching, or the skeptic that's watching. What do you? What is the end game to someone like Hal Puthoff making up an event like 2005 to say, and then but please don't answer with he wants to sell books. That's the worst. That's the worst thing I ever heard at a conference like this, to sell books. I mean, come on. But why? Why do you think someone like at his stature would say this? I don't even know if he wrote a book, by the way. Riley, what you hear this was in 2005. There was this conference to say, hey, maybe we do this. And then the things that we've talked about, the thing that Rogan and Grusch talked about was the fact that, well, wait a minute. You guys have, if I'm company B, you guys have had this. We didn't get a chance to bid on it. We didn't have a chance to work on it. And you guys have been hiding this from us. I'm going to sue you. So there's that. There's the stock market. There's religion. There's all these different things that we've been talking about that was brought up at this conference. What did you think about those comments made by Puthoff?
Yeah, well, I mean, it just reinforces a lot of my previous points, but it's just like, one, again, you just asked it, like, what is the point? Why would they do this? Why would they, go on record, so to speak? And not to sell books or anything. This even back then, when you think 2005, such a different world than we live in now. I mean, social media wasn't even really there.
Right.
And so, I just, it just confirms that this has been going on for so long. We can go, oh yeah, it's been going on since, the 50s. Well, I mean, in the age that we live in right now, the 2000s now, and we're in the 2020s, it's even going on then. There's nothing, these things, these statements can ruin their life. And it begs the question over and over again, why would they then come out and say it?
Right. So
because that just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
And if you say they want to sell a book, that their life will be better if they sell books because they have money. Well, credibility is out the window.
Right.
They're looked at as kooks.
And he's been involved in it so long. But the actual comments themselves, though, what did you think about the fact, the conference and the fact that they decided against disclosure at that point, and what do you think's different now?
Yeah, well, I think it's because they knew that we weren't there yet.
Yeah.
There
wasn't the Grusch. Yeah, there wasn't the Grusch of it all. There wasn't like this.
There was right. There wasn't the Grusch. There wasn't not social media. I'm not going to say that. Technology, I want to say, is that it's very different now, even from 2005 until now. Perhaps, and I don't know, this is just speculation, it was brought up before, like, in the that there is credible, not only witnesses, but that, there are sensors and there are data. You showed me that great video with Cuomo interviewing Ryan Graves, who says, like, we literally have radars that can target a window of a small hut from, a million miles away, kind of thing. So we rely on that radar for our very life, because we're flying around and we know that this is over here and this is over here from that radar. So when something goes wonky on there and we see something on there, a UAP on there, that's real. That is real to us because it's as real as the guy, my best friend, flying next to me in an F-14, right? Maybe the technology wasn't there, so they couldn't really back it up as much as they would want. Maybe that, there's, I would say, probably zero help in the Senate and in our government,
right?
Because we weren't there yet. We were there when it comes. I think if they said peep, there would be the, you've said many times, Kristian, it's like the not debunkers, but the misinformation is more powerful than the real information, right? They would be swallowed whole by just whatever. And they do not have a New York Times article behind it. They don't have that video that was released. They don't have Grusch, like you said. I think there's a million reasons why.
Yeah,
I think they just didn't have that confidence in going forward because there would be too many naysayers, too many skeptics, too many, men in black suits.
Well, I think I think they were the men in black suits at that point.
Probably.
I think more so what you're talking about, though, with they didn't have the kind of momentum that they have right now, for sure.
Right.
But I also think that there's, it with social media, another way that things are out there. I mean, even look at the Super Bowl. Look at the Super Bowl. There was like 4 alien-based commercials.
I know.
And they were like, and the one that was actually, I thought, the most powerful one was the Scorsese one.
Scorsese, yeah.
Because he actually used stuff from the hearings. He used stuff from like things that were going on, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I also think that Scorsese and Spielberg they're tight. Yeah. Spielberg is very much an advocate for all this stuff, and worked with people like Hynek and Jacques Vallée on Close Encounters. So this is I think that there is a lot of merit to what you're saying, but also in terms to the government and what the government doesn't want you to know as far as disclosure goes. This was another one, and I'm telling you, this conference was just full of gold. Here's another one. Hey guys, real quick before we move on, I also wanted to tell you about two more of our wonderful sponsors, both Blue Chew and the people over at Fume. I love both of them. I want to tell you about both of them. They help out the show tremendously. You guys, we try to always find people that we think you're going to enjoy. So if you have the means and you can do it and you can support the show, please consider our sponsors. And let me tell you a little bit more about both Blue Chew and Fume. Here you go. This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. Come on, let's do it. Let's talk about sex. Hey guys, remember the days when you were always ready to go? Everybody, you're like, yeah, back in the day, go whenever I wanted to. Well, now you can increase your performance. You can get that extra confidence in bed. Listen up, BlueChew.com. Blue Chew's no joke. It's pretty great. It's a unique online service, and it delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable tablets at a fraction of the cost. You can take them whenever, daytime, night. You can plan ahead, be ready whenever that opportunity arises. And the process is super simple. You sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you are approved, then you receive your prescription within days. And the best part? All online. No visit to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. So, for me, yes, it works. And the thing is, you know, I didn't think I needed it, but hey, you try it for a month and you see, you love it. You could be missing out on the best sex of your life. I'm telling you. They always say first impressions are important. What about lasting impressions? Do it. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. They do. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. Love that. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. You got to try Blue Chew free, but you got to use that promo code BIGTHING at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. Promo code BIGTHING to receive your first month free. Yeah, do you hear that? Free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we got to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. Let's talk about some habits, because you guys know you got some habits, and there's nothing better than beating a bad habit with a good habit. And we've talked about Fume before. You guys know we've talked about Fume. We've had Fume on, and we're glad that they are back. It's great. And Mark Riley is the one who's really been talking this thing up, and I can't wait for him to talk about it even more so on the show when he's on for UAP. And he's just talking about how flavorful it was, better than he thought. It feels very fresh, and it's like a refreshing herbal tea, but if it was vapor. You can look at like sticky soda. It's got it's really good. It's well weighted. It's perfectly balanced. It's extremely fun to fidget with, and it really, look at the wood itself. It's great. You can start the year off right with the good habit by going to tryfume.com/bigthing and getting the journey pack today. Fume is giving listeners to the show 10% off when they use that code BIGTHING to help make starting the good habit much easier, because you get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit that you're free to enjoy, and it makes replacing your bad habit easy. It comes with adjustable airflow dial, and it's designed with movable parts. It's great. They use flavored air instead of vapor. Fume is completely natural, by the way, instead of electronics. And this is the reason why I decided. People are like, well, why would you get involved with something like this? Why? Because they don't use harmful chemicals. They use delicious flavors. And that's why I got involved. Fume works. They're great. So thank you again to Fume for sponsoring the show. All right. So this was one I want to play for you, Riley. And this is from Tim Gallaudet, who is talking about the fact that the White House does not want to disclose. They don't want to. And this was his reasoning behind it. Let me show you.
Well, let's talk about those areas that we need action. The Hill's doing it right. We got some good work with the House. I just was approached by Representative Luna. She is interested in having another field hearing, this time on USOs, undersea UAP. So we'll see where we go with that. And that's good. So there's action being taken. And Carl, I'm looking forward to your presentation about the Schumer Amendment. But what about the executive branch? This is where things aren't going well. You have this big disconnect between what the House, the story David told, and of course the AARo office under Dr. Kirkpatrick. Why is that? And it's not complicated. Sean can't do and say things without clearance from the SecDef, and above him, the National Security Council and the White House, and likely DNI. And everybody who's worked with the government in this room, there's many, they know how this works. And this White House does not want to disclose. That's their policy, and Sean is merely following that suit. Now, and the same is going on with NASA. If anybody saw the live meeting, yeah, what do you want to call that? There was nothing. There was zero data. There wasn't one example. At least Sean showed that Mosul orb. But yeah, and this was such a non-event. And it's for the same reason. They get their orders from the White House. That's how it works. And so the policy currently today is non-disclosure. And the two bodies we care about are the Office of Science and Technology Policy and the National Security Council, and probably others going forward. So here are my recommendations for you, Garry, and Peter. And first off, I just want to say that your idea for Sol to be a holistic approach, combining hard science and the humanities, is just brilliant. Please give these two leaders a big round of applause.
All right, that's super important because it's also confusing, right? Because as he says, the White House doesn't want disclosure. Well, then why the hell is Schumer out there talking about this stuff? You know, if the White House doesn't want it, wouldn't Biden be like, cut that out, stop that? You know,
yeah,
that's what I don't really understand, and I'm sure there's an answer to that question. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I also think that clip pretty much answers why your question earlier about 2005 and why, you know, they didn't move forward because of, you know, like the government red tape. As far as the White House, I think that, you know, earlier it was said it's like the president has the sole authority in making the, you know, going out in front of everybody and saying, here we go.
Right.
So I think that, you know, maybe behind closed doors, Biden is saying, Schumer, what are you doing, man? You know, we don't know that yet. I think that it's because what I really like about Schumer and Rounds and all these guys that are working together, the bipartisanness of it, I think that's the word, is that they're working together to get to the White House, right? To get, like, they're rattling the cage. They're going, listen, because they believe in it. All the people that we've mentioned over the many shows that we've had, you know, whether it's AOC and Rubio and Gates even, and then Schumer and all these people that are coming together, unified to get some answers, is very it's very promising, at least from my viewpoint. And I think that it's because of that entity, it's that they're trying to get to the White House. They are trying to make this happen because this is what our government is supposed to do.
Right.
They're supposed to work together, you know, three separate, you know, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and then the executive, the branch with the President of the United States. You know, the House, the Senate passes it, goes to the President, signs it off, right? That's what's supposed to happen. This is part of that process.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. And I think that, again, they mentioned the freaking Schumer thing here in November, how important that thing was.
It's really important. They keep bringing it up.
They keep bringing up every single thing. So now, Garry Nolan, obviously, there were more people who spoke and with a lot of very relevant things to say. Garry Nolan spoke on actual things that were retrieved, and I recommend going over there and listening to Gary's whole thing. The reason the clip that I have is over like 7 minutes long, so I'm not going to play that whole thing, but he talked about a lot of different, I mean, just the Sol Foundation in general, so I would just recommend going over there and checking that video out. But they closed out the entire thing with Grusch, and Grusch like Skyped in. But this is a particular clip of what he talked about that I thought was very important, and we'll kind of end our coverage on this with his thing. And here's the little tidbit from Grusch. And again, big props to the UFO Joe, who broke down all these clips wonderfully. All right, here it is.
The integration of this kind of technology into our scientific knowledge could propel us to the future with unprecedented innovation, shaping industries, improving our quality of life. It's not just about knowing, it's about the potential to revolutionize our understanding of physics, biology, and chemistry, and other foundational sciences. Releasing this information in a controlled, planned manner, such as Karl Nell has discussed during the conference, as with the Schumer Amendment, has profound implications on our philosophical and spiritual perspectives. The acknowledgement of otherworldly intelligences challenges our very concept of existence, encouraging us to reconsider our place in the grand tapestry of the universe. It's an important and profound introspection and a catalyst for a new era of spiritual awakening. In conclusion, this movement ignited in December 2017 with Leslie and Ralph's famous article in the New York Times is not merely a matter of government transparency, it's a paradigm shift that holds the power to reshape our world. By embracing the unknown, we open ourselves to a future where truth, unity, and technological advancement and a deeper understanding of our existence converge. Let us advocate for transparency, not for ourselves, but for the generations to come as we embark on a journey toward a more enlightened and interconnected world.
All right, so when you get that, I mean, you get pretty much every reason why David Grusch is doing what he's doing. He sums it up in that 2-minute clip. And I think what he said that was fascinating also, right, is the fact that there are so many scientists that aren't working on this stuff, that don't know about this stuff. There's like, and the answer is probably not. But what if the people that they chose to work, the Lockheed Martins or whoever it is that's actually working on these things, the scientists that they recruited and stuff too, that are looking at these things, the people that they hired, what if they aren't the best? What if they aren't the best? What if they thought they were the best, but they actually weren't the best? What if the best has no clue and thinks that this is all taboo stuff? And the best, he or she is sitting out there and going, yeah, those things don't really exist. And then, no, guess what? It does. And the president just announced it, and we're putting together a team of all these different, and the amount of people that start to work on it can further the understanding on it and can further civilization. And that's what Grusch is saying, right? Can further the medicine involved, the technology involved. Humans in general can be just benefited from this. And yet we're not doing it. And that's one of the things disclosure can happen. And the other thing he said at the end was for future generations and things that because what if whatever is disclosed can just change the world like that? And whether it's peace, that was a decent snap, peace, whether it, just change, like the oil industry is probably another reason that they were like, oh no, please don't, because what kind of energy are we working with?
Right.
You know what I mean? Can it benefit the planet? Can it benefit the way that we travel? Can it benefit these other things? Like that's the type of stuff that the world will change like dramatically, and why for future generations. So that's why I thought Grusch's speech at the end was pretty monumental.
It really was, and it was beautiful. It really is, and the thing that, to sum up what even you said, I mean, he propelled us into the future, And something interesting you said, it's like, the fossil fuel industry probably doesn't want this to advance us anymore. They're already having a problem with these electric cars driving around. You'd think that, the Tic Tac stopped at Chevron to fill up and then flew off into and got picked up by the jets and the radar. No, it's because they're moving on something that we don't even know, that's been said in some of these videos. They're doing, G-force that would just crush any man-made metal or substance that our crafts are made out of. Garry Nolan, he went up there and he's talking about pieces found,
right, and
then breaking it down, the science of it. Where he mentions like isotopes, and everybody goes, oh, not nuclear, not like that. But there's literal science of like pieces that they found that Garry Nolan is saying in one of these videos. And it's like they put it through and they see that these molecules and I'm paraphrasing, of course, are not matching up. And he goes, that's man-made, or not man-made, but that was engineered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so it's like we can't even classify this, because it's like you have, you know, when it was first found, they're like, oh, it's all magnesium. And it's like, so they run it through, and it's like, no, there's like a molecule here and a molecule here. And the way it's put, and again, I'm not no scientist, but I'm listening to this going and getting the cliff notes of it. And it is, this was engineered. Yeah. This doesn't match up to anything that we know of, science or otherwise. And then you take what Grusch says, propel us into the future. You take what you said just now, Kristian, like what it can do for us. Is it technology that can advance us? Is it, you know, is it going to make a better life because there's something that will sustain us energy-wise, where we don't have to pay DWP $800 every 3 months, right, because we ran our air conditioning during the summer? You know, it's that kind of stuff, like the little people, like us, like, and I mean that. It's like, it's summer in LA. I live in the valley, and it's hot as F. You know what I mean? And we run that air conditioning, and we get that bill, and it's like, oh, and it hurts.
Right.
And it sets us back with savings or whatnot. Like, what kind of technology can be forward? And then more so that I got more than anything that Grusch said is that we live in such a time right now that it's like, if you're a Republican, you're supposed to hate the Democrats, and the Democrats are supposed to hate the Republicans, and they're killing bills that can really help all of us because, you know, a leader, one of the presidential candidates says, no, don't do this, on both sides, I might add. You know, it's just, it is so disheartening to see that we as a government and the people cannot work together anymore. It just feels so daunting, right, to try to get on the same page. And yet you look over here with UAP stuff, and you have bipartisan people working together.
Yeah. And
can this unify us?
Yeah, and that's the ultimate question. Will it stay that way? Because in anything, you wonder if it would get politicized, or whether it would get, you know, they try to monetize it in a certain way, or whatever they might do.
That's a huge concern.
It's a huge concern, but it is a matter of what is, and that will ultimately happen in a post-disclosure world, because it's like, okay, we have this technology. I mean, is it infinite? The stuff that we can use, is it like, what is it? Like, that's the whole thing. I mean, there's some people that also say that these things are already benefited from, and cameras are benefited from some of the stuff that we recovered. Now, take that as you will. I have no idea, but that's just some of the stuff that people have talked about. But either way, look, that was a lot. That was a lot. And to be honest, we didn't even cover all the speakers. There's so many. We could have covered it for like 6 hours, but that's the stuff that we really, they were just popped out so much. You guys could have a field day and go and watch all of them. I highly recommend that you do, to be educated on it. Go in there and check it out. We're not done yet, though, because I want to show you guys this. You guys heard a lot about the name, and we've said it on this show a bunch of times, and you've heard it in a few of the presentations there, and that's Sean Kirkpatrick, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what to make of this. This is from theexpress.com. I don't know what to make of this. And it says, classified alien documents set to be released, including videos by the ex-Pentagon chief. Now, this is a complete 180 of everything that we've heard from Sean Kirkpatrick recently. And it says, Sean Kirkpatrick has demanded the release of classified documents, citing a lack of transparency surrounding UFO sightings. What?
Huh?
I'm so confused. So the former
Sean Kirkpatrick?
Right. The former director of the U.S. Department of Defense's UFO task force has come forward with allegations of being muzzled from divulging crucial information regarding extraterrestrial life. Sean Kirkpatrick has demanded the release of classified documents, citing a lack of transparency surrounding UAPs. During his tenure as the head of the UFO task force, Kirkpatrick expressed frustration at being restrained from sharing significant findings with the public. He emphasized that despite possessing evidence supporting his discoveries, the Pentagon officials impeded his efforts to disclose the truth. He said there was a very strong concern to engage in the public discourse as often as I thought we needed to. The fact that the Pentagon can't figure out how to get at that message without concern for spillage into other areas has been a frustrating point. The physicist asserted that his department faced obstacles in communicating vital information about enigmatic aircraft, leading to a concerning lack of clarity in the government's approach to investigating UFO sightings. Kirkpatrick voiced concerns that the government's reticence could fuel speculation among conspiracy theorists, potentially legitimizing unfounded claims about ET encounters. He emphasized the importance of transparent communication to counteract the proliferation of unverified narratives. He said if there is a void in the information space, it will be filled with the imagination of the public. Furthermore, Kirkpatrick alleged that he faced censorship during press conferences, preventing him from disclosing his team's discoveries. However, the Pentagon has refuted these claims, asserting that Kirkpatrick was always permitted to communicate his findings. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
I'm so confused. Like, I don't... That's the only article on that I could find. That's not to say that it's not a real thing, but that's the only article I can find on that. Please send it over to me if there's more, if you guys find that. But like, and again, how is this? And in this, I'll say, how is this not a bigger story? And I'm not talking about just with, the CNN article that wrote about backing up all his claims. Where's that refute to that? That's part one. Part two is, where's everybody inside of this community not talking about this? I get it. Everybody's talking about the Soul Foundation videos right now, but this is major. If he turned around and he goes, hey, guys, I wanted to tell you the truth, but they told me not to. That's what this article is. Is this article real? I looked, it's not April Fool's Day yet. So I don't know. I don't know if this is real. I have no idea.
I'm as confused as you are. It is a complete 180. It makes zero sense after some of the things he's come out and said just last week, or maybe in the past few weeks. You brought up that CNN article. There's an opinion piece, CNN article, where they quoted Kirkpatrick saying that, oh no, there's nothing for my, it's human all the way down. And then commenting on some of these things that we've seen, and especially like the balloons, or saying, well, that's what it was. Sometimes they get they get away from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. So now you're saying there is? I
don't know.
I don't know. Was there such a backlash?
No, dude, because I looked
some of his statements.
Because I just looked up. I can't find anyone else reporting that. I can't find anyone else that actually has the comments from him at all. That's one article. I need to see more articles before I believe that.
Okay.
And it's just so strange.
Same.
Like a week later, and it's more strange that people inside of this community aren't covering it like all over the place. Like that's what's weird to me. So I don't know how legit it is. All right. So finally, Pavel, our good buddy Pavel, had the opportunity to interview Nick Cook. So again, Nick Cook is a best-selling author, and he's an award-winning journalist, and he wrote one of the most important books about the search for anti-gravity propulsion. And he was the aerospace editor for Jane's Defense Weekly, which is one of the biggest defense and aerospace publications in the world. So Nick is writing The Light Beyond the Mountains, and he's dropping it episodically on Substack. So he's got direct contact with some of the biggest names in the UFO disclosure effort, such as Hal Puthoff and Ross Coulthart. So Pavel, I'm going to put a link to the full interview, but I'm going to play a portion of it right now. And this is him actually talking about David Grusch, and he's talking about his claims from his own perspective as a well-connected journalist. So here is his opinions overall. This is from Nick Cook and our buddy Pavel. All right, here is the interview clip with Pavel and Nick Cook. Here you go.
All right, moving on. I wanted to ask you, from your perspective as a former defense journalist and with your connections, what do you make of David Grusch's claims? This is mostly for the people at the big thing that are going to be listening. So I would like your opinion on everything that's happened and what he said, and based on the people you're connected with. Do you think he's legit? Do you think I do though, but I want to know your opinion.
I've not met Dave Grusch. I know plenty of people who have, and they are people that I respect, and they say that he is on the money. this is a guy who is who held a very high position in the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and previously, I believe, in the National Reconnaissance Office. So these are very serious, secretive, well, the NRO is a secretive organization. And they swear by the sincerity of Dave Grusch. And I think that there's little doubt, or no doubt, that he held the positions he's claimed to have held within the Pentagon that had oversight of the UAP phenomenon. Whilst to many people his claims would seem outlandish, I think given the sort of the general direction of the UAP investigation that has been undertaken by Congress on Capitol Hill over the last year and a half or so, I think we can safely say that Congress itself would have flushed David Grusch out as not being genuine if he wasn't genuine. And to the best of my knowledge, that has not been the case. People are impressed by the evidence that he's given. He has encountered, of course, great difficulty in presenting evidence because a lot of it was highly classified and secret. So there are protocols around giving evidence that I know, or I hear, he's been frustrated by. For example, he has to give a lot of his evidence in what's called a SCIF, which is a secure compartmented installation. It is shielded from electromagnetic energy so that no one can listen in on whatever's being said. And that has been quite a hard thing for him to do. So I think that his claims are interesting and deserve to be taken seriously.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you two points at once because I think they're connected. I've been getting up to speed on all the literature, yours included, and a lot of great investigators such as Jack Valet or Dr. Michael Masters. There are so many hypotheses on what the phenomenon is. And people, I think that it's important for people who are not on this to realize how many decades of investigation and work, hard work, have been put on investigating what the phenomenon is. Out of every hypothesis that you come across, which one is the one that convinces you the most? Or maybe not just one, maybe two or three, or where do you stand on what the phenomenon actually is?
Well, of course, I'll preface this with, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
we can speculate.
And I always say, you know, when talking about this, Pavel, that I reserve the right to change my mind because, you know, this is a very fluid field. And new evidence is presented all the time, which I think should make anyone who is seriously interested in the subject give pause for thought. And you know, if you stick a stake in the ground and say, this is my view, I'm not going to change my view when you are discussing the phenomenon, I think you're going to be in all kinds of trouble, because I think the phenomenon itself is inviting us to be curious, and in our curiosity to not to hold too rigid a view about it. Because every time I've seen someone hold a rigid view, it's been confounded. So my view is that there is no one phenomenon. It is a multifarious phenomenon. It has many faces. And whilst, you know, it has been through different phases, there is the man-made aspect. You know, could it be heavily classified technology? Could it be these are beings from other planets who are visiting us in, faster than light vehicles to get here? Or is it something that is resident here on Earth? Is it a combination of all of these things? I mean, the answer to these questions for me is yes. It's probably all of the above. The one, though, that I find the most interesting is the one that has sort of become more prominent over the last few years, which is that we are dealing with a non-human intelligence or multiple forms of non-human intelligence that somehow manifest in our reality from time to time as UFO or UAP phenomena.
So thank you to Pavel once again for providing that. You can watch the full interview with Nick Cook. I put the link in the description there, but it just doesn't stop blowing your mind, huh? I mean, this is
I love that.
It's a great answer, and it's like, I think it was a really good answer. It's like, it could be any of these things. We have our idea. I think you and I are on the same page. That to me, it makes more sense of the last thing that Nick said, of being in our realm and always being in our realm, but able to maneuver and manipulate things that we just don't understand how to do that in time and space, and being able to bend time and space. That to me makes the most sense, more so than bouncing back and forth in light speed to other planets, but who knows? Yeah. But I loved his answer. I thought his answer was great.
I thought his answer was fantastic.
I love his answer on Grusch too, by the way. I loved his answer on Grusch.
Yeah. All of it. He's just such a, really interesting guy. And Pavel sent me the gift of some of his work that I'm reading, and he's just fascinating. And I like the answer of all of the above.
Yeah,
it could be. I think in certain cases it could be man-made, drone, or something that might not be completely friendly, i.e., maybe spy balloons, China,
right?
Or it's manifesting into our reality. Something that it made me start thinking, just almost creatively, which is not something that holds any merit or science-based, but it's just like when you start to consider all the information that we've been just taking in over the past year almost, that some of these things are around nuclear sites, that they are emitting radioactive kind of things, and that are they coming from the sea? Are these things like reacting to the human race, and they've been here all along?
I think so.
It's fascinating stuff to consider all the possibilities.
I wonder if that's the type of stuff, if we are ever in a place where it's a post-disclosure world, if we'll know any of those answers. I really do. I'll be honest. There's so much more that we could talk about today. It's just we're already almost like at 2 hours, and the show's usually about an hour. So this is a super stacked episode. I want to see comments out the wazoo here, guys. I want all of the thoughts. I want all the thoughts. Well, the thoughts on the stuff that we played. I want stuff on the conference. I want stuff on whether you not think that disclosure is coming. Do you think it is a pipe dream? Put it all in there. What do you think about the Sean Kirkpatrick stuff? Is that legit? What do you think about the stuff Nick Cook said? I mean, there's so much that we covered here today, and we're not done, because next week we got Steve Bassett on, and that's another one. That's another kind of supersized episode. He is the executive director at the Paradigm Institute, and he is also the first registered UFO lobbyist, and he's a UFO disclosure advocate. And he is very well informed in all this stuff, and it's the interview is fascinating. So we'll play that for you guys next week. But Mark, man, we did it. What do you got? Where can people find you?
Oh, well, you can find me on the internet for now, before I head off into space. At Riley Around, REILLY Around. See you there.
I want to thank all of our sponsors today for being on the show. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to help out the show and you can support the show, you have the means to support the show, please consider one of our wonderful sponsors here today. Right there, hit that subscribe button. Be part of the conversation. If you stumbled upon this and you're like, oh, what is this show? Hit the button. Be part of it. We also launched our show, Who Is? And we want to break down all of the UAP community and the players in the game. We started with David Grusch. That's our first episode, and I know the music was a little louder than the audio than my voice. It'll change. Don't worry. Next, I think we're doing Lou Elizondo, so you should check it out. If you missed it, it's probably going to air on Monday nights, I think. But double check it. It's on the channel right now. Make sure you hit it. So I want to thank Aaron Wilhelm. If you saw in the beginning of this show, the wonderful T-shirt company. That's Aaron Wilhelm. So make sure you check him out. Support him. Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate you. For me and Mark Riley, it's UAP Tuesday. Thanks for waiting around for the episode. Hope it was worth the time, and we'll see you soon.